Then he meets a king, Sugriva. I don't know whether you heard of or not, Sugriva, a monkey king, and of course Hanuman, Maruti. He meets them on the way. Now, Sugriva's brother, Vali, he has forcefully taken away his kingdom. Sugriva's kingdom has been snatched away by his brother Vali. Not only his kingdom, but also his wife. And this man is helpless. He is helpless. And therefore, Hanuman and Sugriva, they are sitting on a mountain top somewhere in the south. And then when these two people, Rama and Lakshmana, come to that place, they feel that there is some kind of an affinity between these two. Sugriva's wife has been abducted, kingdom has been lost. Rama's also has been same thing, story more or less, and therefore they thought that maybe we could be companions. We could join hands together and do something together, you see. So they come together, and Sugriva knows the strength of his brother Vali. He is a very strong man, and he wants to test Rama, whether Rama can withstand the force of Vali, his brother, whether he can defeat him in a battle. He applies a test to Rama. Then only I can be your companion. If you are a weak person, then I don't care about you. If you are a strong man, then maybe we can come together. So that is the test he has proposed for Rama. And the test is, he says, look, there are 7 tall, hefty, strong trees, teak wood trees, ebony trees, thick, strong, in one line, like that. And he says that if you can shoot an arrow and pierce through one of the trees, he tells Rama, if you can pierce the arrow through one of the trees, then I know that you will be able to defeat my brother Vali. That is the test he has proposed. And then Rama takes the arrow and bow and shoots the arrow. And the arrow pierces through all the 7 trees completely. And this man is convinced, yes, he is the person I can be friends with. And he is the person who can defeat my brother Vali. Now, this is a story at a different level. You see, piercing with an arrow, ordinary arrow, 7 ebony trees like that, thick, solid, you see, and one after the other like that is impossible, you see, humanly, you see. But the occult sense is very clear. The occult sense is very clear. His force can penetrate through all the 7 worlds. Wherever it be, strong, solid. Why 7 trees? See, the person, the poet is a rishi, is a person who has occult knowledge of all these things. 7, why 7 trees he has put there in the row like that, you see. So his power is there which can really penetrate through all the 7 worlds. That is what the connotation is. The significance is very clear about it. It is very openly written on the story itself. But modern mind would not understand that, you see, basically. So it is that kind of a test which was applied by Sugriva to Rama. And then they became friends, etc., etc. The story starts from that on. Therefore, I say that even when we are talking of this meeting place, it is very obvious that it is something which is deep. In fact, let me sort of quickly skip for a minute and go to the opening sentence of the next canto. No, wait, afterwards. The opening sentence. See, what does it say now? all she remembered on this day of fate. See, that is enough. Simultaneously, you can see where things are happening, how things are happening. Savitri is coming to this place and he says she remembered all these things already. The road that hazarded not the solemn depths, etc., etc., that thing is it. But the opening sentence, all she remembered on his day of fate. That tells you that the story is narrated simultaneously at different levels. At different levels. That is the important thing about it is. In fact, that is the beauty of Ramayana. And in that sense, Ramayana is much richer than the Mahabharata. In terms of these connotations, it is much richer than Mahabharata whole story. To a large extent, we have also certain things of this kind in Homer. Very clearly, very obviously. All these things, centaurs, these creatures, these poets have seen somewhere else already in their occult vision. When he talks of through the ivory gate, see, suddenly it's a different thing altogether, through the ivory gate. A gate which is a kind of a illusionary hope which gives you. You see, say when towards the end of Odyssey, when Penelope is about to meet Odysseus, she dreams for a while whether I was passing through the ivory gate, whether it's an illusion. You see, that kind of thing. So these people are already simultaneously writing this story at different levels. That occultism is there very richly in all those poets, you see. And that is what really makes poetry enduring. If you really grasp the sense of it, you see. Savitri is like that. Yes, you want to say something? Yeah. So, magician of our rapt felicities. Who is that magician? Of course, her lover. Heaven. Magician of our rapt felicity, blithe, senses-hearted, careless and divine. Life ran or hid in a delightful rooms. Behind all brooded nature's grandiose calm. And then you have the most wonderful line here. Primeval peace was there, and its bosom held undisturbed the strife of bird and beast. That is the strength of true peace. Strength of true peace. All the vital instincts of killing each other, strife, struggle, they suddenly fall silent, fall quiet, become ineffective. So, a deer and a lion, or a serpent and a mongoose, they can stay together because they are under the full dominance of imperturbable peace. It is that peace, primal peace, and therefore these creatures can live together, you see. That is why they were happy. Deer and lion, tiger, beast of prey, everybody. Man, the deep proud artificer, had not come to lay his hand on happy, inconscient things. So that is again very indicative of the time when this is going to happen. The first meeting of Satyavan and Savitri, which is also a meeting which keeps on repeating, which is also a meeting which takes place in eternity. Man, the deep-browed artificer. By the way, I was talking about Vanara and all that. In the case of Rama and his army made of Vanaras, monkeys. Now, there is a very, very detailed description of that in the Record of Yoga. Record of Yoga. Very long description. And maybe it's practically a full chapter is there in the Record of Yoga. And from there we can very clearly see that the time of Ramayana belonged to the earlier epoch, to the earlier Manvantara, before this Pralaya. It could happen, but this is now, see, in fact this line is very clear. You can see from here what we are here. A very deep line. Man, the deep-browed artificer, had not come to lay his hand on happy, inconscient things.
Yeah, but Mother talks about the paradise.
On inconscient things he has not arrived.
Yeah, in that place. No, she talks about the paradise on earth. There was a mental being and
Yeah.
everything lived.
It means that the mental being is not there yet.
No, exactly.
It means the mental being has not yet arrived on the scene.
In Christianity, it's like before Adam and Eve.
Yeah. Yeah.
Paradise.
See, here you got the primal peace was there, and in his bosom held undisturbed strife of bird and beast. Peace was there. And at that point, man had not arrived on the scene. Huh. On the scene. As the artificer, the inventor, the skillful person, it was natural, all the moments were there. Means it was pure life. And the life force, it is that which works in its own smoothness. You see. Man, the deep-browed, you see, he is a thinker, artificer, very skillful, inventor, all those things are there, had not come to lay his hand on happy, inconscient things. He uses the word inconscient, that is the clue. The clue is in inconscient things. So this is a story which is a much deeper story than one can think of, you see.
Ask Mother. She would have been able to reply.
Yeah. So we are in the seventh. Mother says no, there were 6 creations earlier. They were dissolved one after the other. We are in the 7th creation, and she also says now there is no going to be any pralaya. Yeah. And she says based on equilibrium and stability and all kind of things, she describes all those things. You see, this creation. Man, the deep-browed artificer. Now this has, of course, a double meaning. If you simply read the first 2 lines, man, the deep-browed artificer, had not come to lay his hand on happy, inconscient things. That is at the beginning of the arrival of the mental being. That is what this line would mean. But in the immediate context, it also means, well, this is the destined meeting place. This is the destined meeting place. And human civilization, human things, human skills, they are not yet there. It is a raw kind of a life, so to say.
Pertinent to that location.
Location.
Not to that time.
Yeah. At that time. I mean, that is what in the storyline, this is how you will interpret it. But I will not disengage the other association which is there in the first 2 lines here. Man, the deep-browed artificer, had not come to lay his hand on happy, inconscient things. That is a very crucial phrase, you see, at the same time. So there is a double, simultaneously you are describing the nature as well as something deeper also, you see. Thought was not there, which is obvious now, the mental being is not there. Now the measurer, strong-eyed toil. Now, thought, mind is the measurer of things. Mind is the measurer. Measure is given by mind. Mind has a capacity, in fact, mind's quality, mind's purpose, function is to measure out things, to break, to analyze, to kind of separate one from the other, cut, dissect, all those things are there, qualities of mind, you see. Measurer. In fact, it is because of the measuring possibility that what is formless has started acquiring form. See, what is formless? How do you cut and do and that kind of a thing? By measuring out, by cutting up things. That is required also. In fact, that is how it starts, and this mind, the measurer, its origin, the deepest origin or the highest origin, so to say, is in the overmind. Its origin is in overmind. It is from there that the multiplicity starts appearing in the overmind. Multiplicity. What is one, that kind of gets now divided. In the supermind, there is a multiplicity, but behind the multiplicity, there is a knowledge of unity of each and everything in the supermind. There is a creation, there is a manifestation, but there is a knowledge of each and everything in supermind. In the overmind, that knowledge starts dissociating itself from one to the other. And the multiplicity begins. When it goes down, 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 then there is a total separation. In other words, you can say the appearance of what we call objects is an act of creation starting from mind. Mind is a measurer. Objectification, giving a concreteness, shape, form, definiteness, it is that which starts happening there, you see. Thought was not there, now the measurer, strong-eyed toil, life had not learned its discord with its aim. So it is a kind of a life paradise, you see. See. Then the mighty mother lay outstretched at ease. That is the picture. Here, of course, again, in the immediate context, the mighty mother stands for the physical nature there. In the immediate context, the physical nature, all that is being described here, she is the mother who has given rise to all these things so far. But mighty mother does not stop with that. In fact, I have made a little note here. What happened? The phrase "mighty mother" appears 15 times in Savitri. The phrase "mighty mother" appears 15 times in Savitri. Then, along with that, there is the occurrence of ancient mother 6 times. The ancient mother occurs 6 times. Then there is an occurrence of an ambiguous mother once. So we have got mighty mother, we have got ancient mother, we have got ambiguous mother. 15 and 6 and 1. Pardon? 1, only 1. It will come shortly here. It is here, 101.20. This was the scene with the ambiguous mother. Right there. This is the only occurrence here of ambiguous mother. Now, in the mighty mother, there is a difference between one occurrence and the other occurrence. In some places, in a couple of places, we have mighty mother, both M's capital. Mighty mother, M capital. In other places, mighty M is small and mother is big. That also brings out a certain kind of a difference between these mothers, mighty mother and mighty whatever you call it. Now, the mighty mother, let me quickly see, for instance, 13.2. Now, this is belonging to Ashwapati's yoga, the secret knowledge. A playmate in the mighty mother's game, one came upon the dubious whirling globe to hide from her pursuit in force and form. Now, this is a different kind of a mighty mother. You can see that this mighty mother is not the same thing what we have in the present context, you see. Let us take one more example, 74.32. .3 to 32. .74, 32. Deep peace was there, but not the nameless force. What it? Deep peace was there, but not the nameless force. Our sweet and mighty mother was not there. What a sorry state. Who cares about that place if she is not there? Huh? This is in the self of mind, in the mental plane, you see. Our sweet and mighty mother was not there, who gathers to her bosom her children's lives, her clasps, etc., etc. Now, this is again a different kind of. You want to note down where these occurrences occur? I can give you, if you like, all the mighty mothers. And then, of course, we have got very close to what we are saying, 98.14. Authors of earth's high change, to you it is given to cross the dangerous spaces of the soul and meet and touch the mighty mother, stark awake, and made omnipotent in this house of flesh, and make of life the million-bodied one. Now, this is a totally different kind of a mighty mother. She is the mighty mother of the omnipotent force. Of the omnipotent force. This is what Ashwapati is saying in his trance vision, and this is what he is going to tell to Savitri. Then 146.56.